Hey guys, welcome back to AGX Media. Today we're going to be diving into what is causing so much excitement in the crypto market as of late. And joining me is none other than Alex Saunders, founder of one of Australia's biggest crypto news sites, Nugget News. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, mate. I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Absolutely. Now, before we do dive into it, as usual, guys, if this is your first time joining us and you like what you hear today, please do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Just makes spreading the message about what we're doing that much better. So, Alex, I saw a recent piece where you were eyeing $100,000 Bitcoin price by 2030 and possibly a million moving past that. Now, you're not the only one that has put out such ambitious price projections. We've also seen Citibank recently put out a projection of around 318,000. And in addition to that, we're now seeing Bitcoin getting pretty close to that 20K roof that it hit in its previous sort of boom cycle. So give us some insight here. Why is everybody all of a sudden so bullish again?
Yeah, I mean, I've been bullish since Bitcoin was $10, and I'll remain bullish as long as the fundamentals stay the same. And those fundamentals are simply the fact that there are trillions of dollars out there, and Bitcoin represents a better way to store wealth. And more people are coming to this realization. And I think the thing that's different in this cycle is you're seeing people like Michael Saylor. Yesterday it's one of the Game of Thrones stars. So it's all the way from celebrities to the Stan Druckenmillers of the world, legendary investors, that people have finally joined all these dots. And it's no longer just, guys called Nuggets News on the internet. It's, more reputable, trustworthy people with long track records that are saying, you know what, if the Fed are going to print 25% more currency in 1 year than they have in all of history, well, this digital currency, this digital scarce form of gold, or we can get into all the attributes. I actually still really like gold and silver, but I just think that it is such a strong narrative, that very, very basic premise, just the supply and the scarcity, without getting into all these other factors. And when you look at the market cap at around 200 billion, $250 billion, compare that to these trillions of dollars out there. When people are sort of running towards Bitcoin, that's why we see dramatic moves in price.
Makes perfect sense to me, and I largely agree with you. But to that point you brought up, now we're having more reputable individuals come on board and sing blockchain, specifically more often than not Bitcoin's praises. But what do you make of people who have kind of flip-flopped on their stance? People like Jamie Dimon, who have historically hated on cryptocurrencies and are now embracing them. What are your thoughts on these kinds of behaviors?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that old Gandhi saying about, first they laugh at you, then they ignore you, and then finally they come around and they have no choice. And that's what we are seeing now. And nobody wants to be first. And I think the big thing that people don't always understand is the career risk. So someone like Stan Druckenmiller, he's just got such a big following and millions of dollars, billions of dollars under management. They can't go out and say, you know what, Bitcoin is interesting when it's less certain, but I think we've crossed the chasm now, and you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And so
Mhm.
now you have more people that are confident to come out and say this, and then that creates the snowball effect, and now nobody wants to be last. And that is in terms of whether it's billionaire investors, or we're starting to see some hedge funds and sovereign funds. The other day we saw Iran say that the central bank is going to buy all the bitcoins that they mine to do trade with. Now, that is an amazing news announcement, even though it might upset the US and those trade sanctions. So
Yeah.
you've got all these different big or smalls that now are racing to say, you know what, we do want some crypto. And we've seen it in the gold market, which I'm sure you guys have covered, constant buying and holding by central banks in recent years. And I think to some degree, Bitcoin is going to be similar, where they're all going to want to have a little percentage of that as a reserve asset as well. And when you think about, everyone has got that money printer going brr at the moment and doing the QE, it's all a bit of a race to the bottom. Australia, who have always said that they'd be very reluctant, and they actually said they thought we'd never have to do QE. And we're now doing $100 billion of QE for our little country. And so when you have this situation, it just makes sense for those central banks or the individuals or investors to say, where am I going to look to put some money? And I think you're going to see a lot of people start to chase all commodities and hard assets and tangible things, scarce things, whether it's property or Bitcoin or gold or these other commodities. And we hear stories of China stockpiling commodities. So when you've got this fiat currency that everyone's just printing out of thin air, I think there's going to be a race to get real goods. And that's where central banks might be playing, a little bit of a deal with the devil. They're welcoming this higher inflation, and careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I mean, aptly put. And you made the point earlier on in the conversation about how people are now looking and eyeballing Bitcoin largely as a way to store wealth over traditional cash. Now, what role do you see cryptocurrency playing in the future here? Flash forward to your 2030 projection date there. Are people really using cryptos as currency, as I believe was initially intended with Bitcoin, or is it more being treated like a gold, where it is more of just a store of value, and people are just trading it speculatively? And if so, how far away are we from the fully adopted future?
So what we've seen with Bitcoin is that it has gone down that path of more becoming the store of value gold, and we're seeing less transactions and more hodling, as we call it. Whereas Ethereum, which I'm also a big fan of this network, that is maybe becoming a more active network for everything from sort of dApps and rebuilding the internet to payment and a lot of these stable coins. So the vast majority, well over 95% of all the stable coins on Ethereum. But then we've got this competing world of central bank digital currencies, or the Facebook, if they do Libra, or Jamie Dimon, those guys released JPM coin the other day. So you're going to have all these stable coins either on Ethereum or their own little networks, and they will be used for payments. So
Right.
Look, the ultimate goal, and if Bitcoin's going to get to $1 million in that far future, I would probably see it to the point where it also actually upgrades and improves and becomes a really good payment layer with maybe the Lightning Network on top, because at the moment it's not quite there, and that's why it's gone the route of more for the hodlers, while we have the other networks that are flourishing for payment. So we still don't know who the winner is. There can be multiple winners, but that's just the way that things have kind of gone at the moment, where the transactional value and like that we call the velocity of money, it's really stalled in the real economy, but it's just going exponential in the crypto economy.
Yeah. Well said. And you brought up stablecoins, which is a great talking point as well. What are your thoughts on these the JPM coins, the Libras of the world, that are backing their assets with fiat, quite frankly? And do you not see this as sort of I don't know if the word is antagonistic, but sort of contrary to what crypto's whole vision is of trying to get away from fiat banking?
Yeah, I think it's more just a bit of a minor upgrade. People often forget that money was already going digital. And so when we say digital currency, well, the US dollars or the Aussie dollars that we use every day when we tap our card or pay for our lunch, they're all just digital these days. We're not really going into the bank and drawing out a lot of money or getting paid in cash, or there's no gold backing up these fiat currencies at all anymore. So look,
Hmm.
I think it's probably just a little bit of an upgrade for the banks and for these private companies. But the other thing that's super interesting is that recently the laws have been changed so that US banks can custody cryptocurrencies, but they also can custody stable coins. And there's a rule that they actually have to have a 1-for-1 backing for those stable coin dollars.
Hmm.
But if you think about it, it's so funny in my head, because we know that the real dollars are fractionally reserved, or these days they don't even need reserves, because the Fed are saying, hey, we'll print money if there's ever a bank run. Don't worry about those reserve requirements too much. So we've got one system which is 1-for-1 backed, and one system which is, fractionally backed, if anything. So to me, it's all just a little bit of the kind of highlighting the Ponzi nature of fiat currencies even more so.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I tend to believe it's just kind of more of the same, rather than something that is truly new or innovative. But going back to the stable coins, you also brought up the commodities. And what are your thoughts on the rise of commodity-backed stable assets being used for payments? Do you see that as a viable path forward for the crypto industry?
I think it's probably more the path of the digitization and tokenization of just more things in general. So,
Mm,
look, a lot of gold and silver bugs, and I would count myself in that group as well. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. So, I think most people, that's definitely the place you want to start when you go down that rabbit hole and have some silver coins and all that sort of thing. But then I do think they have their place. So if I need to send you some gold or silver overseas, obviously that is far easier to do with a digital backed version, as long as we trust the custodian. Like I was saying to you in the pre-interview, is the company ones that has audits and they're reputable, because there are, lots of scams out there. So it's like anything, as we see more and more assets go digital, whether it's shares or gold and silver or other commodities, it's going to be still about the properties that blockchain highlights, trust and transparency, censorship resistance. And so if it can bring all those things on top of the world of commodities, where we see, tungsten bars again a few months ago pop up in China. So look, I think it can just add to the bullish case for gold and silver and give them more utility, hopefully.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And now, one final question for you, and this one might be a little trickier, a little bit less discussed in some situations. But there's also been the talk of using these stablecoin assets or stabilized assets that are backed by a commodity in developing nations that presently have been subject to hyperinflation. Do you really see the adoption of these blockchain assets as likely in the near future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes we forget that to these people in Argentina or Venezuela, a US dollar of all things is almost worth its weight in gold. So for them, it's kind of harder to sell the message of Bitcoin or gold, because that's more volatile and speculative. They would do anything just to have a dollar, because their currency is debasing so much that the US dollar seems stable. Whereas if you ask an American, they say, well, 25% dilution this year, we need to get out of the US dollar. So it's kind of almost like a progression of where you are in terms of the monetary policy of your country. So everyone is going to go down this path of one step at a time. A lot of people are going to think that the central bank stable coins are great. And then they're going to realize, oh, wow, these are still being printed by the trillion. So it just depends what your, I guess, need and use case is. And that changes for different people, whether it's capital controls or hyperinflation or censorship resistance. There's kind of a coin out there to help you.
Fantastic. And then largely I couldn't agree more, and it's a process of education, which takes time for most people. Being around for a decade really isn't that much time in the big scope of things when you look at how long even traditional fiat has been around. So Alex, I appreciate you joining us today and giving us your insights. Do you have any closing words for our audience before we let you go?
No, I guess just enjoy the journey down the rabbit hole. I'm sure you guys love doing all the educational stuff, and we've got loads of free educational stuff as well. I'm sure you guys will put a link down below or whatnot if people want any more information.
Absolutely. Thank you once again, Alex Saunders, founder of Nugget News. As per usual, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the content today. And once again, if this is your first time and you like what you heard today, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us grow the channel and spread the message about the honest money revolution. Take care, guys.